Historic Preservation Commission of Fairhaven. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. That's pursuant to NJSA 10:4-8B. Due to the COVID-19 situation, the Borough of Fairhaven's municipal facilities are closed to the public. This meeting is being presented through Zoom meeting platform and being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of February 23rd, 21 is available by call-in, phone number, or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until the portion of the public questions or comments is made available, and that will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question or comment by phone or through Zoom by the quote raise hand close quote button, and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in the schedule of meetings sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, the Star Ledger, and on January 15th, 2021, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board, the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. So we can get a roll call. You're muted.
Did you want me to do that? Or if you
Yes,
have to,
you probably do it, but you're muted.
You're muted.
I'm not muted.
It's in the lower left of your screen, of the Zoom screen.
I know, but I'm not muted.
So Stevie is up.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Let's see.
Now you're still muted, Steve. You got to find that little, it's the little microphone with, get rid of that red slash. There you go.
Got it.
You got it.
Golden.
Stevie,
Okay.
you're good.
Gone.
She was here.
Yeah. She's back. You're good, Stevie.
Okay. Jay Anderson,
Here.
Luba Caruso, Pat Drummond, Michelle Mandia, Hillary Mullen, Bart Padlock,
Here.
Joe Sluter,
Here.
Stephen Smith,
Here.
and Stevie Thompson here. Sorry about that.
Okay, so the first matter that we have is an informal application. It's Rebecca Padula. It's 31 de Normandy Avenue, Fairhaven, Block 49, Block 49, Lot 19. I'd spoken with Ms. Padula this week. I extended my apologies to her. This was apparently an application that was dropped off in person and for whatever reason was not electronically mailed to me, and I was not aware. I did not get a copy of that application until yesterday evening. She and I spoke. I indicated to her the requirements that we have as far as noticing and posting notice. This I don't think has happened in the years that I've been doing this. Unfortunately, Ms. Padula, you get the short straw when it comes to this. I did indicate if there was any type of an emergent nature to this application as an accommodation to her, that we, especially since we have a little bit more flexibility with this electronic platform, to have a special meeting if she needed it. But at this point, what I invited her to do and what we are going to do is have her appear on an informal basis to get the feel and get some comments and thoughts from the commission, and then have the application pending for a formal vote during the March regular meeting. So with that being said, again, my apologies, but we'll hear from you regarding 31 de Normandy Avenue.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this informal review. I really don't know what to expect. I submitted the application on February 8th. I want to make some improvements to the house I bought on de Normandy Ave. To the exterior, simply replacing the second floor siding with cedar impressions and board and batten. Making some improvements to the front porch, replacing the railings, replacing the front door, replacing or fixing the roof for the front porch, doing some more cosmetic, I guess, updates to the columns and making them look more in line with a bungalow type of structure, which I think this house is naturally that a bungalow. I don't know what other information do you need?
Yeah, what do you need? Do you know anything about the house itself, about its history, about when it was built, any additions made, anything about it? It's
I know that it was built, I believe it was 1917. I believe the second floor is an addition. That's all I know.
second floor in the rear, because it looks like the
Yes, it's
there's
set
that
back.
little like front area, but then there's the bulk of the mass of the house appears to be in the rear. That's what you're talking about?
Correct. Yes, that's, yeah, it's set back from the front of the house.
Okay. And we have obviously the renderings and the elevations provided by CDZ Architects of Red Bank. There's some illustrations, there's some photos of it, renderings, photos of it as it is now, sort of indications as to where some of the cues from for the front columns and the facade are drawn from. I handed to your architect for presenting a very impressive and thorough package, and that sort of thing. Let me ask you a question as far as, because the one thing that kind of jumps out at me when I was looking at it, because I know it's something that we've addressed a couple of times with houses that are in the historic district. And this house, I would think, even though it was built in 1917, I'm uncertain, and maybe Joe and Jay, chime in if you wish, how contributing it really is. Actually, I thought it was going to be a little bit later vintage. The original structure was obviously a modest structure, but I don't know, it's not necessarily one of the main structures in the historic district that would be contributing to the district. I think what you're offering to do is a drastic improvement over what's there. But the one thing that we've had issues with in other applications is the metal roof. Have you given any consideration to any other type of roof on that front? I know that I understand the wisdom as to why you'd wanted to do it, but just in terms of it not necessarily being historically correct or contributing from a historic perspective, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that would be my preference to have that roof. If I need to negotiate that, then obviously I have to do that. The new construction, new house next door has a metal roof on the front. And so I'm not sure why it would pose an issue, but something to discuss, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know what portion of the metal roof is on the other structure next door. I forgot which.
The whole front porch roof.
Over the front porch is metal roof, is it?
Yes.
Jay or Joe, any thoughts on that?
We definitely have roof, and I had a couple thoughts all around, if it's all right, if I could just kind of jump in and pick up from where you left off. The one thing you didn't mention is that I think it was a hipped roof before, with a projecting dormer that came out the front that provided the light, the window on the above. And it looks like that was the case on the front and the back. Looks like it, might have been lower on there. So that the part that is kind of the 1917 part is pretty much buried in this. That being said, as you were saying, it was a non-contributing house, and I believe that to be the case too, largely because of the additions that were put above it, because it was like the tail wagging the dog. I mean, it's usually you don't want to have the biggest part of the house be set further back into the house, and obviously you had nothing to do with that. That's the way you purchased it. So, but you didn't make mention of it, and it probably makes sense when you go for the full application to mention that in addition to changing materials and details, you're also building going from the hip roof to a gable roof on the front. And that, I think, in a way helps to marry the mass of what's up above to what's down below, because it really looks like this thing that's floating up above, and it's always been kind of an odd thing in my view of it. And I think the way there's a change of materials from the first floor to the second floor helps to make some visual sense of that, big thing that's up on top. It kind of brings it down. And I think that the board and batten also helps to tie it together. The things that I think that might not fit into the district are some of the materials. There's very little stucco into the historic district. And this is being reclad in stucco on the first floor. So I'm a little worried about that. The second thing is the Cedar Impressions is vinyl siding. So, I mean, that's something that we've often either mandated or encouraged people to go with something like a hardy shake, which is not cedar, it's a cementitious material. And as Art mentioned, the copper too. I mean, I think those things start to subtly reflect, kind of the modern farmhouse thing going on. And a very attractive group of materials. It's really not part of the historical group of materials that are in the historic district. So I think that's something to talk about. And then some of the details, on the second floor, they may be pre-existing, it's not clear, but there's pork chops in there. And that's something that we usually frown on because those were not generally done in a historic context. It's something that's been done recently. That's kind of a expeditious way of terminating the soffit into the gables on the front, but not a historic, kind of a termination of that. And to that matter, the first and second floor are handled differently. And the way the roof returns are done on the two floors, and I think that kind of pulls the two apart and is really at odds with what I was mentioning before, the other things that you did that kind of pulled the house together, which are really missing now. And the other thing that there's, by putting the stucco on the way it's been shown, it goes all the way down to the ground and extends all the way up to the first floor. Definitely done in other regions of the countries and other times. It's not something that I'm not aware of any other houses in the district that that have that. So, my thought just overall was just that I think the big moves are all make sense. I think some of the details and materials though might want to be revisited to pick up on those that are in the district.
Okay, can I please comment on the stucco? The house is existing stucco. I'm not making it stucco.
Okay, and that may be one of those exceptions that are there. It's the only one. I think as Pat sort of did a survey of the town, and you know what, it'd be interesting to see if it was there. So that, I mean, was
So
it?
Are you suggesting that I need to change it?
I'm just saying I'm not aware of any other houses that are there. I think you brought up a point. If it's there, there's a chance that it was always there. I'm more familiar with more of the California bungalows that would have the stucco on the first floor and then the cedar shingle on the second floor. It would be the only one I'm aware of in the historic district, but it could have been done a long time ago. And certainly there is latitude within the district for things that were done at different times. I think they're just trying to avoid the trendy kind of moves like the modern farmhouse stuff that is just what's really current there and kind of undermines the cohesiveness of the historic district. So I think it would be an interesting and worthwhile thing just to say, hey, that stucco has been there since, 100 years. And it may be. I'm not familiar with the particular house. I don't know if you are, Joe, if you've are aware of it either way, but that was just kind of an overall look at that when I saw the plans a little bit ago.
Jay, I did not look at that house yet, but I believe I know which one it is. And, you know, the stucco that is existing, I agree with you as far as the pork chops, but they're existing too up on the upstairs. I think we definitely have to get good siding on there, like your suggestion, or even if they do natural cedar.
Can you explain to me what a pork chop is?
Yeah, it's the, if you go to the upper portion of the house, the second floor, do you know what the gable shape is? That kind of A shape?
Where I'm pointing,
Yeah.
right there, where do you see?
Okay, all right.
Those things, right?
It's right where it comes down. And Joe, to your point, that's the way it is.
I'm
You know,
looking at one of the photos.
I just want to
Let
follow
me
up.
just ask a question.
I think the
rear.
the second floor.
That's not going to be, that's existing. So the side, obviously you're putting new siding on and so forth, but that's not being expanded. That's pre-existing. Okay. Yep. So yeah, I'm looking at this photo, which is marked existing.
Yes.
Okay, I've not seen that.
All right, let me hold it closer. Do you have, yeah, you have to open it up. I have the hard copies. I don't know. I don't know which image it is, but it does, it's kind of hard to visualize, but it does seem to indicate that there is an existing pork chop.
Yeah, and you know, everything about that is that this board has in the past had issues with the pork chop, the lack of any overhang on that rake up there. I mean, everything about that addition, and I know you had nothing to do with that, nothing at all. But everything that was done up there was really at odds with the district. Well, can I give you a for instance? If you look at the rear of the house, and we have no jurisdiction of the rear at all, but if you look at the returns on the first floor, which I'm assuming are new, I don't know, they would have to be. Yep. Can you pull that up easily, Art?
You need that photo that I was just showing?
No, the rear of the, well, you know, let me see if I can do it. This is the,
Yes.
like the front? Let me see if I can hold it to the rear. I just don't want to get everybody sick here with this thing moving up and down. Okay. Can you see the gable return at the bottom? That's what we've, as a board, have been recommending in lieu of the pork chops. I don't know if you can see that, Joe.
I can see that, yeah.
So that's what I'm suggesting would be a more cohesive type of vocabulary that would pull the house together. And I think the fact that your massing now starts to pull those, I mean, when you look at that existing photograph, it just looks so funny. I think what you're doing generally is a vast improvement. You know, that I want to be, you know, up there for that, but I think a little bit of attention to some of the materials and details could go a long way. And that's why we're here. I mean, is to, you know, to help that. So in no way trying to say that the overall thing is a miss. I think it's as an overall picture, I think it's making a much more cohesive house and pleasant house. But I think, even the board in Batten, I think that helps to tie the two floors together as well. I just think it's a few of those small details that would be more consistent with a historic, you know, sort of history of how they did the details. So that, I mean, I know this is not an official thing, but I would certainly say that, you know, at the meeting and or to Kathy, would she be the one that would be presenting if she was coming, or would you do it?
I think it would be me or
Yeah.
Joe. Sacco is my architect.
Oh, it's not Kathy Zuckerman?
No, Joe works for Kathy, I believe.
Yep. Okay.
Were you planning on for the actual application, were you planning on having him appear?
Do I need him to appear?
Well, so a couple of things that Jay has mentioned are probably things and what we've done in the past. And, again, I don't want you to have to spend money on professionals where, it's not necessary. But these are all, I think, pretty valid things. We'll go over them again, but valid points that Jay raises. Perhaps it's something that maybe your architect and Jay, you could speak about offline, things that might be able to be remedied and things that could be looked at maybe for not significant cost. And then when the formal application is made, those things can be addressed and you can outline them, or your architect can outline them, or Jay can even indicate that these were things that were originally proposed, but as a result of the comments during this informal session, were modified to comport with the desires of the commission. That's why, in essence, it's probably good that we're doing it this way, because you kind of get the vibe, for lack of a better description, and then you can kind of go back and sharpen the pencil, so to speak. And then when you come back and formally request a vote, the commission realizes that we try to be practical, but that you've made these accommodations. And so I think that the big things, I see the columns, obviously it's listed, at least in the rendering, as being either stucco or AZAC. Jay, I imagine that AZAC would not be something that would be offensive, obviously, to you, and doesn't obviously the columns themselves.
Made now to be able to weather the weather. So no, that's something it's usually painted AZAC, and I think that's probably what you would end up with. And that's really almost indistinguishable from wood, except it's going to last. So that's
your impression siding, which is, of course, you see it from the rendering also. Something like that probably would need to be looked at to see if it's some type of a closer wood simulation product rather than a vinyl product, since that's probably a pretty prominent portion, even though it's set back a bit, but it's going to be fairly prominent on the house. So that's something, again, that maybe want to be considered. And I'm not certain, and I didn't go through every one of the illustrations and the plans, but does it indicate that stucco is going to be utilized throughout the entire structure, or is it just indicated on the columns, Jay?
The whole, actually, I think the columns are not, it's the column bases would be, and the whole first floor would be. But I'm really curious with the applicants saying that it's stucco. There's a fair chance that it was always stucco. I've not seen it elsewhere in the district. I would love to, kind of get our arms around that, because I don't think we're trying to say this was all settled at the same time. It wasn't. I mean, it went through a whole number of periods, but I haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't there. I think it'd be a worthwhile thing to just scope it out, just more for both for interest and also I think that's could be within the latitude of the historic style itself.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if the existing structure or the old structure is stucco, I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm not saying that it wasn't like that. I mean, that would be interesting. It's just something that would be atypical.
And I'm not planning on changing that.
No, right. Especially if it's existing, that's a different circumstance than, the creating a stucco. I think what the fear is that, we've all seen modern stucco houses, not
or something like
little that or anything, but just to and we have one of those in the district that was done, without our involvement years ago. And I think that there's, certainly an effort to not have that happen if it can be avoided. But clearly, if that's an existing condition, it's not going to be a circumstance that we're going to require you to start anew throughout the entire house if it's merely an expansion of what's there. And is it, you think of the modern stucco techniques, Jay and Joe, is that similar to what would be there? I mean, I think of an old, of a historic stucco, that those two words go together. But I mean, was there a different
it could have been
that was utilized back in that time?
It was, if it was like a 3-coat stucco, on wire lath, and as opposed to something new that might have been done over ephes and have, an acrylic top coat or something like that. So, it's probably easy enough to scope. And again, well, I think you just said it, and I think it's a fair enough thing. It's there already. And if anything, they're bringing this house more into being a contributing house than what it was before. So, point well taken on that. I think even though it's may not be other houses other than the one that you made mention of, which clearly it doesn't really fit into the historic district. If it's the one I'm thinking of down on the right, as you go to the water on Fairhaven Road. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't. And to your point, we have done that with a few other applicants recently, where we had that kind of off that meeting otherwise, and then they came in, and then we can make a report to you just on. I mean, it would be exactly these things. I could call Joe, and
Yeah.
we the three of us could, and just say these are the things that we brought up during the meeting. Which ones, are things you could consider, and we would be looking for, and so. Try to, like you said, get ahead of it rather than going to the next meeting and saying it and having it drag out another month.
Sure.
And
Jay, I agree with you.
And I also want to point out that I agree, though. I don't want you to think that we're just beating you up on this application. Obviously our job is to point to a couple of things, but for the most part, I think it's a significant improvement, and I think we all like the design. And again, as Jay mentioned, from a macro standpoint, there's a lot of really good things. It's just some of these little elements that could probably be fine tuned.
Okay.
Joe, you started to talk. I'm sorry, I talked over you. What thoughts
No,
did you?
that's okay. That very well could be an original stucco house like that, a little bungalow with the hip roof and the hip dormer. But I follow Jay on the upper section of that addition in the back. I think a fly rafter and getting rid of the pork chop with a little return on front and back would definitely help the look. I mean, granted, we have no jurisdiction on the back, but I think you would want to do it the same front and back.
Yeah, and you may be on the two floors. I mean, I was going to bring that up to Joe too, where the first floor, and because right now the two are done very differently. There's well, you know what? Even if you just did you maybe modified that hip. There's kind of a heavy hip on the first floor return that goes continuously across the whole front, and then there's it's just being handled totally different on the two floors. If they could probably pull those two together, it's going to be a more cohesive home and not make the thing seem like apples and oranges, which it is right now.
Jay, what do you think of them doing that same, running it right across, that hip part running right across and into it?
On the second floor?
On the second floor. It might look a little heavy.
Yeah, it might. We can talk to Joe. Maybe they could take a look at it. But I think if they were a little bit more similar, I think it would, help to even take this to the next level of tying the two together, where clearly when they did it before, there was no, they just added a thing up there, and they didn't pick up any cues from what was on the first floor.
Exactly. I agree with you totally.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments? And just so, Ms. Padula, so you know, I mean, again, this is the whole purpose of this exercise is to do exactly what's happening here, kind of give you the idea of, what's sort of acceptable or what direction we would go. Because I think if we were to take a vote tonight, if it was a formal application, it may not pass. You may not get the majority. So it actually, do you want Jay to speak with, or Joe, but Jay predominantly, since architect to architect is, our experience has been in the past that sometimes through these communications, certain small design modifications have been made where the applicant is actually more happy with what the final design is, because it's like, wow, I didn't think about that. It not only serves the desires of the commission, but it actually looks better. It's like a streamlined design, or for whatever reason, it's sort of, so people that are in the building trade, people that are in the architecture trade, kind of putting their heads together and coming up with a more efficient design. So I think that that's probably the best thing. But what I will tell you is when you do come back, whether it's next month or there's no prohibition on coming back, even on another informal basis, but it can't be a situation where the same proofs are submitted and just you say something like, oh, we'll do it the way you want to. And again, you've gone, the elevations and the degree of detail that your architect has supplied. We don't need to recreate all that. We're sensitive to the cost associated with doing this. But if there's going to be a modification or change, there's got to be something like a revised drawing or elevation that shows us what actually is going to be done.
It wouldn't have to be
That's
the
all we have to go on, and we can't go on somebody's representation and, oh yeah, we'll do something different. We mark it, we identify it, and that's what your application rises and falls on, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, if you're willing to speak with Joe Sacco, I'm open to that. I don't really know like the modifications that you're suggesting, how they would impact, but I'm flexible and, in terms of materials, for example, you said the cedar impressions, if we have to go with the hardy shake, we can look at that. I don't know about the pork chops, but I'll let you two hash that out.
Well, you know what, in this case, since you're going to be representing it next time, if you would want to be on the phone call, we could do it, on, I have a conference call number, or we could just even do it off the iPhone, or if you prefer a Zoom. Yeah, I'm around. I'm pretty much.
Should I set that up with Joe and yourself? And is your contact information in the application? I think
It probably isn't. Could I give it to you?
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm just going to give you my phone number, my cell phone, 732
Okay.
796
Okay.
4254. And then I could, or if you prefer to do it by email, I could give you that. But that's we're renovating our offices and just using our cell phones for a month or so.
Okay. 732-796-4254.
Yes.
Great.
Terrific.
I really do appreciate it, and thank you for at least giving me the informal review. I know there was a snafu, but that's okay. We'll get through it, and as I said, I'm flexible. I just want to make the house look nicer.
Right.
For myself and for everyone else.
This is, if you have any question, you have my email as well, and my phone number. If you have any questions or concerns, or you can't put it together, what you need to put together, just feel free to email me or call me, and we'll do whatever we can to help you expedite the process. But I think at the end, you're probably going to get something that you'll be very happy with, that might even be nicer than what you're proposing now, and that it's going to be a win-win all around.
Okay, great.
Okay, so if you have any other questions now, great. If not, if anything comes up, give us a shout. But I think it'll work out great between the architects.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jay, for volunteering to do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do so.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
You too.
Okay. Very good, Jay. Thanks very much on that. So before I forget, because it's something that came up, Joe and Jay, I'm going to probably give your number to another applicant. Let me find it. He emailed me offline, and let me find him. Yes, it's Chris. He lives at 62 de Normandy. So we used to call it the old Towler residence. It's almost diagonally across from where Hillary lives. It's a yellow gable and L house on the right, and it has a barn in the back, a large barn. Are you guys familiar with that at all?
No, I haven't been down that way.
You can't see it. You can barely see it from the street, but it's actually mostly visualized from all these houses, sort of in my backyard, and between de Normandy and Gillespie. And he called me up, and he wanted me to take a look at it. And it's old, and it hasn't been redone. And he wants to restore it, and he wants to rebuild it. And he's willing to, pretty much go to great lengths to do so. I actually invited him to come on an informal basis with us tonight, but I probably because of the snow and everything, he was never able to put his proofs together. I'll reach out to him again, but I assume you guys don't mind if I give him your guys' phone number. I'm Joe. I'm sure you'd love to take a
That's
look.
okay. Yeah.
Hey, it's
Whatever help
very
we
neat
can give.
structure.
I mean, we couldn't, as a professionally take it on, but I'd be happy to go over there and give whatever advice or.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I think that, yeah, you guys between your construction and obviously design, I mean, it's something that he's willing to try to preserve. I don't know if there's anything that could be preserved. It may have to be rebuilt, but it's a large structure. And it was, when I took a look in there, there was some like writings on the wall from the 18th stuff, like notes written on the wall from like 1899, there's no power in there. And it's a very, very, very neat structure. But again, it may be beyond repair because it's got roof issues. It seems like it's collapsing to some extent in certain areas, but it's so I didn't want to go ahead and do that unless I got the okay from you guys. So again,
That's fine.
62 Denormity, and his name is Chris. I'll put him in touch with you guys, and hopefully he'll be before us on one of the other meetings. So why don't we move on to old business? We will talk about Bicentennial Hall. I guess Jay, why don't you tell us how you made out that meeting in the early part of February, or maybe it was January. I don't exactly know the day it was that you met out there with Pat. Tell us what happened.
Well, there was a number of, I think both people from the council and people on the building committee in town. So there, it was maybe about 20 people there, Teresa. I'm not, there was so there was a number of people there, and I think the general intent, I think that you've probably seen with the number of things going up about building a new town hall and so forth. And I think a lot of that I understood was kind of being abandoned, and they were looking to use the building more for a variety of things. They said it wasn't going to be things like dodgeball or bombardment or stuff like that. That was really going to, take, it would be more of gathering type things, even, like our meeting place, ours, and as well as the zoning board and so forth. So that type of stuff, kind of a community building. And in terms of the particular, the one particular that they talked about was having the handicap access getting moved from the side to the rear as being a specific thing. And then I believe they said upgrading the handicap bathrooms as well. It was sort of, and then, some modification up near what would have been the altar area, but there wasn't specifics. And I, so it was only Pat and I there representing this board. And I think, personally, I think it's great that they're going to be using that more. Because I hate to see it, you're sitting there fallow after, renovating it and restoring it. And then it just, because it just tends to need upkeep and so forth. And so I think having it be an active part of the town makes it a living history. And I think, personally, I think that's awesome. But what I tried to say was any improvements that are being done, I think they should really try to follow some of the historic cues that are in there, both internally and externally. And I know we have no jurisdiction on the inside, but, I think it would be undermining kind of what's there if they, just threw in some stuff. And it, I think there was some suggestions that there's, we were talking at the beginning of a restoration architect from Ocean Grove could potentially be involved. And there was the original preservation architect that helped to get the grants and prescribe the work to be done originally, which she could potentially be involved too. I don't think the RFI has gone out, or I guess RFQ to either of them, but their names were mentioned. But just in the very end of this, that they were talking about the colors and all that, And, certainly during that period, the churches weren't white. They were done, either, earlier in white. Most of them weren't, where a lot of stuff got painted white later on. And I know there was some extensive research. It's clearly out of favor now, the color scheme and stuff that's there, but it is, a representation of what, was most likely there at the time. But I mean, that's a totally side issue and anything. So, and then, people went down and kind of broke into different groups and talked about pretty much anything, everything under the sun, most of it unrelated to the building. So it was maybe about 10 or 15 minutes or so, up where they sort of were talking about you doing that use and some modifications that would be necessary to like the handicap ramp. It was unclear sort of what was inside. In fact, I got confused. I thought they were going to do that tonight. That's when that initial meeting went out, and I apologize. I thought, oh my gosh, that's pretty quick. They must have had something already in mind. That was going to be tonight, and it wasn't until you clarified it to me that no, that it was just going to be sort of for our discussion. So I wish Pat was here. She would have had a little different perspective and understanding of what that was about. But
Was there anything that you remember Pat bringing up that she was concerned with, or thoughts that she had that you recall?
yeah, well, it was a lot of things. Really, like the benches that were there, that those would somehow not be just tossed out. Even she was looking at the paneling of the wall where the pews were connected, that they could be refinished in a way that it left the, kind of shadow of the mark and not kind of erasing the history that was there, but somehow preserving it in a way that acknowledged, that stuff was going on. So I think she was really looking into some of the details and parts and pieces that were there. And I think we both did, were, I think, encouraged to see that it was going to get used, but that these improvements could be done in a way that reinforced the history of it rather than, kind of undermined it and took it apart.
So a couple of thoughts, as I indicated before, and I have to look into this, but Pat seems to be of the perspective that the commission does have jurisdiction over whether it's inside or outside. So in other words, ordinarily we'd only have exterior jurisdiction from streetscape, but because this is a unique structure that has such value from a historic standpoint, that the commission has jurisdiction even on elements on the inside. Which to the degree, I mean, that could be possible, and I'll verify that. I say that because the commission and the association were so instrumental in doing the rebuild and doing everything on the inside as well as the outside, and great pains were taken to preserve what could be done on the inside. I also, let me ask you about the exterior ramp. It seems like a good idea to move the handicapped ramp from the side to the rear, because it probably would be less visible.
Absolutely.
And that's something that's I won't call it an evil, because it's clearly not, but if you look at it exclusively from a historic perspective, it's maybe a little bit unsightly, but you can't get around it if you're going to use it. And I agree. And but does that kind of conceal it, even if it's greater in size or more complex, that it wouldn't be really as visible in the location that they're proposing?
Yeah, well, there wasn't any exact proposed location or anything, but just conceptually, I agree. I mean, tucking it behind there, because it certainly doesn't add to the, to the house. And of course, old buildings had to be retrofitted. That's part of, the nature of the laws and the codes and so forth. But it seemed like it really does make sense to put it there. I guess I'm missing one of the biggest things is they want to put a parking lot there directly to the south of it to accommodate off-street parking for those events.
I thought that made complete sense, since it's really just you like to have the grass in between, but it is, space that probably could be used more efficiently, especially when you're dealing with handicapped spots and things of that nature. I mean, did Pat have any kind of particular reservation on that?
Not that I recall. I think it was just kind of the nature of it being put into use for the town and making it functional and taking some of the burden off the streets in the neighborhood. So, yeah, I think all that kind of made sense. I think that, the proof's in the pudding with this. To be able to see something in particular would probably go a long way. I was encouraged that Andy is on the board. Trocchia, I don't know if you know him. He's a local architect from Fairhaven and a nice guy, and has good judgment and so forth. I think we would want to see it done, in the best manner possible. But I'm certainly just with the last application, just a little bit of tweaking on some of the stuff, I think would go a long ways. As opposed to trying to stop them. I just think it's calling to their attention some of the details that may have been there or were consistent with what would have been during that period. So,
And just to expand on that, I did send to everybody a copy of email, series of emails that Teresa was kind enough to send me this morning, which basically it looks like they start on or about the 13th of February and conclude on the 23rd of February, just discussing it, and in particular involving Mayor Lucarelli, Andy Trocchia, and members of the council, and talking about the RFQ and what is being proposed, and the bullet points that are mentioned in that is, again, demolition of the existing ramp system and construction of a new barrier-free ramp system to coordinate with the new parking lot area to be constructed by the borough. Issues relating to a barrier-free lavatory and alterations to the existing lavatory to comply with the New Jersey Uniform Construction Code. Barrier-free dais to accommodate members of the governing body. Again, an interior thing to just make it more practical. I suspect construction of a vestibule for energy conservation purposes, as well as acoustical separation. I understand that the acoustics are very lousy in that building. Again, improvements to address the acoustical issues and audio visual data technology relating to the meeting hall use, and improvements to the existing structure resulting from new work. These are obviously general ideas. It seems like just very practical things that are going to have to go hand in hand with intensifying the use of it and making it more practical for regular use. And I agree that the building has been there. It has been sparsely used. And I think it's, to the extent that it's going to be more used more frequently, probably is a major factor in its preservation as well. If it's a necessary structure for the town, it's going to be maintained, it's going to be upgraded where necessary, and things that otherwise could probably be overlooked if it's just merely a historic structure that's symbolic in nature will have to be maintained just based on requirements that the borough was under to maintain if they're going to use it as a regular structure. I don't know, Teresa, whether you want to add anything to our discussions here as to your thoughts or where we're at, or adding.
My only thought is, I don't think there's any, I don't think anyone in the facilities committee wants to get into whether or not you control the inside or not. We're not going to get in. They're coming to you for your expertise and for your input. They value it. So we're not going to split those hairs, I don't think. I think the exterior upgrades, the parking lot and the ramp will probably be mostly designed in-house by Rich Gardella, with some coordination, I imagine, with the architect on where it actually meets the building itself. That remains to be seen. But internally, there's only, we need to put a second bathroom in because of it being a public building. There are requirements for, the number of stalls you need to have. And we feel as if it could be tucked away in the back there and not really, impact the building at all. And the dais area, where nobody wants to, I don't think, get rid of that choir area that they have there. And there is a raised area already. So we're looking with the architect to give suggestions on how that would best be utilized. But other than that, you know, I think it will improve the building, and I think they'll respect, you know, what's been done so far and the historical nature of it, and hopefully allow us to use it as a borough building that is functional as opposed to just sitting there. The real crux here is we will, when we redo the police department, where what we currently call a community center will no longer be a part of the police department. So what the facilities committee has in mind is some sort of a passive meeting space, which Bick Hall would meet, and then something to handle more of our active recreational, the dodgeball and the things that Jay had mentioned earlier that won't be going on in Bick Hall. Right now, we're coordinating some of those activities temporarily with the school, and whether or not they can be permanently you know, handled by the school, or whether the borough has to build something in the future, is really something I think we're going to look at down the road, and not immediately. Their immediate goals are to get the Public Works building done, the PD building done, and to upgrade Bicentennial Hall so it can be used as a public building. And don't forget, if we do manage to upgrade Bicentennial Hall, you know, we have some space issues in Borough Hall currently when it comes to library programming and some other factors that would allow us to free up some of that room that now is used in council chambers in Borough Hall over to Bick Hall. And Borough Hall, if you've been there in the council chambers, it's not an ideal meeting space. There's all kinds of columns. It's hard to utilize, and they feel as if, you know, if we can move in, you know, technology wise forward, and you know, be able to utilize that in an unobtrusive way in Bicentennial Hall. A lot of our meetings and your meetings, you know, you'll be looking at plans, you know, up on a screen that may drop down, and or on laptops that you wouldn't necessarily need to be, you know, handling all the paper that you're currently handling. I think that's a direction in which most municipalities are going, and certainly the Borough of Fairhaven will go there, as you know, and they've already made some strides in that direction, but they'll continue to make those strides.
Okay. One of the things that, you know, we were talking, of course, offline, is, you know, moving forward in terms of things that are going to be happening, and how do we kind of stay relevant to what's going on, and stay in the mix and interface with decision making and movements on it. So, you know, obviously as chair, I can manage that, but just maybe give some advice as to what to do to stay on top of this. And again, we have no problem with having special meetings if we have to, you know, whatever we need to do, because, you know, certain decisions or input might be required, and not be able to wait a full month to, you know, when things start to escalate or what have you. And what do you think the timing is that, you know, in terms of some specific decisions that'll have to be made?
You know, I'm going to be honest with you, Art, there's a lot going on right now in the Borough of Fairhaven, and we don't have a, you know, a huge internal staff. So, you know, hopefully we'll, you know, their immediate priority is to get the PD and the DPW buildings through what they would call the planning board's capital review process, which they're shooting for March or April. And once that happens, I can probably focus a little more of my attention to get this RFQ out, and then see where we're, you know, what we do with an architect. They only allocated $350,000 to the renovations of Bicentennial Hall, which, you know, is not a lot of money. And you know, hopefully they won't exceed that, because it, you know, it was in a bond authorization, and they either have to come up with additional capital funding or go out for another bond authorization. So, you know, we're trying our best to be mindful of the overall cost, and some of the stuff, you know, we do have some expertise, not only in this group here, but on our facilities committee, like Anne-Marie Berger, I don't know, you know, from Forefront, which I know you know Anne-Marie and Michelle, they're Fairhaven residents. She's on our facilities committee, and I think she'll be a big help when it comes to helping us with some of the IT and those considerations for the building. So, you know, I think it's probably best to say that, you know, we'll keep you abreast. The first thing, as soon as we have, you know, the RFQs from the architects, I'll share them with you. And then I don't, like anything else in municipal government, you know, the governing body would have to approve plans to go out to bid. And we would never do that without you guys, you know, taking a look at the plans and weighing in on them. So, you know, I would if we even were close to getting these plans out to bid by the fall, I'd be happy.
And I love the idea. I mean, obviously, I know there's no control over it, but again, it's somebody who has experience in restoration of historic structures. Namely, I don't recall the person's name. Pat would know it. That did the original plan. I think they did a great job. We were very satisfied. I know they were expensive. I remember, but clearly somebody that has experience, restoration would be, something that we would look into, or rather be satisfied with.
Right.
Okay.
And even some, I believe we have, I think there's some accordion doors downstairs. We talked about the fact that it originally had a tin ceiling, and maybe as part of the, acoustical upgrades, they could use something, akin to that, and make it sort of look like the period, but serve two purposes. So they were just kicking around general ideas that we'd welcome your input on when we get a little further down the road.
Well, I appreciate you keeping us in touch and, sending the email and, kind of keeping the ball rolling. Continue to do so. I appreciate that. And I'll share it with everybody. And, we'll continuously talk about it and, welcome anybody from the council or from the borough or yourself to, come to any of the meetings and update us, or, if we need to, like you said before, if you need representation at a council meeting from us, we'd be happy to coincide with that. So.
Okay, we greatly appreciate that, Art.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just want to help. And you mentioned Forefront, and this is on a different note, but they were before us probably a year ago about doing some doing some minor modifications. I don't know the address, that small little black, the old Fred's building, that little black.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, at first I drove by there and saw nothing, and I was thinking to myself, don't tell me they
Tore it down. Yeah.
I was shocked. And then I saw, I guess they did it, in one day where they actually moved the structure back. So at some point, as we get closer to it, I want to, we'll see how the project ultimately winds up. But I think that there's got to be some accommodation given to them with just going through that effort to try to preserve that building.
They are good friends to the borough of Fairhaven, Michelle and Anne Marie, and they've really tried very hard. And I don't know if any of you guys have been into the building, the new one that they built, where their main, facility is. But Michelle and Anne Marie, they'd happily take you through it. And the stuff they preserved from that original structure. In the interior, you'd really get a kick out of it. Some of the woodwork and some of the windows, and there's parts of that building that's very modern, but it also has that warmth, rich feel for stuff that they've preserved from the past. And Michelle they have an amazing eye for different art and different pieces they picked up through their travels. And it's a great. You guys would enjoy going through the building.
No, I mean, I really give kudos to them, just in terms of what they've done, the amount of time, effort, and money that they've spent to work with the borough, work with us. And again, with 9 times out of 10 or 19 times out of 20, what would have happened, because I suspect that what probably happened is when they started to do some of those modifications to that structure, they ran into some structural issues or things that clearly could not be remedied. So they're basically just digging a whole new foundation. Very few people would do that. And, they didn't need to come back to us because I guess they're preserving everything. But it's a huge undertaking, very expensive. And again, very few applicants or very few, people would do that. And I really got to hand it to them for doing that. And I think that should not go unrecognized at some point, depending on how it plays out.
That would, I think that'd be a great idea to move forward with something like that. And that, it shouldn't be lost on any of us that they invested millions of dollars in our downtown. And really, you see little changes like that, keeping your downtown vibrant, bringing that workforce, into town and they're young people that are raised families here or going to live close by, and some of them living in town. It helps keep us vibrant, and that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And what could have been, progress could have very easily completely changed the entire complexion of the downtown. So,
when I was first hired, Michael Halfaker was the mayor, and he took me on a ride through town. And he had told me that one of their biggest concern is that the eastern portion of River Road was dying, that for, it was not, it was not going to be sustainable. And what a difference, 10 years have made. That eastern portion of River Road had really come back and come back strong. And, to the governing body's credit, they spent a lot of money in that downtown streetscape trying to tie it all together. And we're going to finish out the western portion of that from Smith Street to the Red Bank border this spring with sidewalks and curbs and lighting in advance of the county coming through to pave all of River Road. So, it's really, I think, made a big difference in the viability of the downtown. Very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Any other comments or thoughts from anybody on the commission or anybody in the audience? We didn't really take any
I'll
comments.
peek at the audience and see if anybody has their hands up. Yes, Tracy Cole has her hand up. I'm gonna allow her to talk. Tracy, you can unmute yourself and make your comments.
Hi, Teresa. Hi, everyone. Tracy Cole. I live at 123 Grange. This is my first time attending a Historic Commission meeting. And first, I just would like to say how much I appreciate the thoughtful care and attention you put into the historic district in each building. And moreover, the way you actually work with each applicant and reach out and offer to meet with them. And it's beautiful what obviously you're preserving an important area. And I just want to acknowledge the work it takes to make that happen. So tonight I tuned in because I wanted to hear about what might be happening at Bicentennial Hall. It's a beautiful treasure. And I'm also kind of along with that, I'm tracking what the implications are for the youth center, community center, which, as Teresa said, is going to go away when the police department gets rebuilt, which has to happen, which I understand. And it sounds like Bicentennial Hall is planned to be a place, would be used by more parts of the community, but not necessarily everything from the community center and the youth center would take place at Bicentennial Hall, which is good to know. And along those lines, I guess my question for the commission is, are there any concerns? Are there sort of critical thresholds and intensification of the building? And how would you measure that or know when it is too much? And is that even a concern? I don't really know the construction of the building and whether or not that's something that needs to be considered or just monitored.
Well, first of all, thanks very much for attending, and thank you very much for the nice comments. You don't usually have fans, but it's nice to always have people that
I'm a groupie.
That's what we do. Thank you very much. And a great question, and it's something that I know that I'm certain that we've all thought about. I know that I've spoken with Pat about, or we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we started these discussions. It has been a building. And just so you know, obviously it has its history, but I think it was renamed Bicentennial Hall because I think in 1976 is when the structure was saved and brought in two separate pieces to its current location. And if you look at even some of, I think the Randall Gabriellan books give a little bit of a history of that. My oldest recollection of this goes back to the 1990s, which really found that structure to be dilapidated. It was leaking. There were animals living in there. It really, what had happened is it was sort of, every effort was taken. I know they had fundraising efforts to try to preserve the structure and do what they did back in 1976. But I don't know whether they ran out of money. I don't know whether they just kind of cut corners. And I'm certainly not faulting anybody. Whatever happened, and it was great that they preserved the structure. But it had gone into gross disrepair to the point where it was really facing demolition. And I want to say that would have probably been like maybe and chime in guys, if anybody has any recollection, maybe 1994, 1995-ish. And then the Historic Association basically, and a couple of members of the association, unaffiliated with the commission. It was, private social group, not private because it was a 501c3 that was created, would have a series of parties and fundraisers and different things to raise money for the preservation of that. And there was initially a survey done by a historic architect, and then a lot of work that was done to try to preserve it, which kind of brings it forward to the condition that it's in right now. But I don't know whether it was ever really envisioned at that point as something that would be a regular used facility for borough business. And so, to your point, I'm not certain that those modifications or changes really are sufficient to accommodate what's being proposed now. But I think that, it's something that it's space that's probably underutilized. It's obviously in demand for the current situation that the borough finds itself in. So I think at least what I see unfolding is somewhat of a methodical approach that's being done by the engineers, architects, and other professionals on behalf of the borough to recognize and perhaps balance this intensification of use, but also both from a structural, practical, and visual standpoint, do what's necessary to preserve the integrity of the structure, not undo as little as possible, but obviously do what needs to be done in order to intensify it. But I think I can't answer your question with any specifics because I don't know that I think the whole process right now is unfolding to kind of get an idea of what needs to be done based on what's being proposed. And Teresa, feel free to chime in because you have much more familiarity, and Jay, perhaps probably from your involvement, that's I think what the process is happening right now to try to gauge what the actual use is going to be and what the needs are. I think they kind of know that, and then try to figure out what needs to be done from both an aesthetic, practical, and quote structural close quote perspective to accommodate all of those needs.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we have the answers now, but that's kind of what's happening.
I guess I raise it just to make sure it's part of the conversation and kind of on the radar. I personally also really like the idea of living history, and I think it's great. The more the community that can interact with the building will deepen the appreciation for history and a sense of heritage. And I personally think that's all wonderful. As knowing that all buildings have a certain, capacity, but with use, they also get loved. Buildings are like that, so they do need to be used.
Right.
Thank you very much for allowing me to ask you my question, and I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
And we welcome you. Certainly appreciate your comments. They're very well taken, and would love to have you appear anytime, or we have certain people that appear at our meetings regularly. Be happy to have you. And no such thing as silly questions or comments. They all benefit everybody.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll be back. Okay. Good night.
Anybody else?
Yeah, there was just one thing I couldn't remember before. I believe the original preservation architect was Margaret Helfand.
What was the name again?
Margaret Helfand.
Yeah,
I don't know how to spell her name right offhand, but it just popped back, and I think it was one who was, worked with Pat and the rest of the association to not only give some directives, but make sure that the grants and so forth were able to be achieved by following those guidelines. So. Again, I believe she may be one of the people that they're reaching out to get a proposal from.
Okay. All right, great. Anything else from any other raised?
I don't see any raised hands in the public. We have 4 attendees, and I don't see anyone else with their hand up.
Okay. I don't know whether we have Stevie around anymore, but I'll make unless there's anything else. I guess we can conclude for this evening. Motion to close.
Second.
All right. Great, guy. I think this is productive. Thank you so much, Teresa. We'll move this forward.
Thank you. Good night.
Good to see you, Betsy.
You're welcome, guys. I'm always available if you need me.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Enjoy the
Thank
rest of
you.
the week.
Thanks so much.
Take care now.
Good night.
Good night.